Congresswoman Foxx. Our chamber chair, Chuck Eiler's goal for this year is to focus on the one thing. With that theme in mind, what is the one thing, meaning challenge, you think our country faces most, and what is your solution?
The biggest challenge that we face is our debt. We have currently a $20 trillion debt, which is holding back our economy significantly. We need to control spending at the federal level. I am a constitutionalist, I am a conservative. We are doing many things at the federal government level that we should not be doing because of overreach on behalf of the federal government. We could control the debt if we got the federal government out of those things that are not mandated in the Constitution for the federal government to do. And we could return to the states those things that are the responsibility of the states. For example, education and health care. Republicans who've been in the majority for the past 6 years have cut discretionary spending tremendously. But discretionary spending, which is what we allocate year to year, is only 1/3 of federal appropriations or federal spending. 2/3 is on autopilot. Thank you.
Josh Brannon, your major challenge that you think the country faces most, and your solution?
Far and away, I believe the worst problem facing the United States right now is a combination of runaway inequality and increasingly lax restrictions on political campaign finance. The combination of the two is creating a vicious cycle where we're getting a smaller and smaller percentage of the population that can buy more and more elections. And we've seen this year that likely billions of dollars will be spent on maybe even just the presidential election alone. In 2014, $36 million was spent defeating Kay Hagan. So we're getting to a point where if a candidate isn't able to raise literally millions of dollars during a situation in which she can't run for an office, and I believe that's fundamentally against what our country is supposed to be about.
It's no secret that the two people representing our two major parties are the least popular candidates in decades. You support your standard bearer? Why or why not?
I absolutely support Hillary Clinton. The Clinton Foundation has done a lot of great things. The Clinton Foundation is responsible for providing half of the HIV/AIDS drugs distributed worldwide, among many other things. I believe that she has constantly worked in favor of universal health care. I believe that she's constantly worked towards equality, and that's the most important thing for me. There are compromises on both sides, I agree, but I don't think that they're in any way comparable. I believe that we have one side that is a reasonable person to have as president, and we have one side who likes to molest women, and I don't think that's I don't think they can be anywhere compared. So yes, I very much support Hillary Clinton.
Congresswoman Foxx.
Yes, I support the nominee of the Republican Party, Donald Trump. He came through a bruising primary system with 16 other candidates. He was chosen by the people in our party. I think that Mrs. Clinton is the most corrupt person who has ever run for office as President of the United States. I think more and more of the evidence is coming out about her corruption, about pay for play, and I think this would be very damaging to our country to have a person with her background and her history. She has been in government for over 30 years. She keeps promising to do things that she should have done in previous iterations in the government if she was serious about doing it. I do not believe that we will see different behavior on her part if she is elected President of the United States. And I think it would be a very sad day for our country.
All right, question number 3. Small businesses struggle with challenges every day with numerous regulations. What regulations facing small business could you see eliminated or streamlined? Congressman Foxx.
Thank you. As the former owner and operator of a small business, I'm quite familiar with the problems that small businesses in our country face. I think the EPA is one of the worst offenders in terms of creating burdens on small businesses. We know that the rules that the EPA has put out, called Waters of the U.S., would affect not only every small business, but every farmer in this country. But all of our government agencies overreach. We have way too many people working for the federal government who are out there every day looking for ways that they can justify their jobs, and that by doing that, they create rules and regulations for those small businesses. Small businesses are the engine of our economy, and if we get the government's boot off of the neck of small businesses, we would see our economy thrive. Thank you.
Josh Brannon, what regulations facing small business could you see eliminated or streamlined?
One thing that Congresswoman Foxx and I do agree on is that small businesses are the lifeblood of our economy, especially here in Watauga. We disagree on the problem, though. I think that right now we have a system where big corporations are given basically any laws that they want, simply because they write the big checks to the lawmakers. And that works against small businesses. We have a system where the cost of entry into so many markets is so high, and the government works to keep that up. And I believe that we should work to provide more small business loans. I believe that we should work to regulate large corporations more so that small businesses are able to compete. And I believe that in a lot of circumstances we should cut taxes on small businesses and simultaneously raise them on large corporations.
Well, good thing you mentioned taxes, because that's my next question. We all hate them, but we must pay them. Unfortunately, small businesses and taxpayers stuck between medium incomes and poverty level often pay a greater percentage of their incomes than large corporations, affluent people, and people below the poverty line. So what can be done to make taxation fairer, Mr. Brannon?
I believe that we should go back to closer to a system like we had under Eisenhower, who was incidentally a Republican, where for people who made the equivalent of billions of dollars a year, they would be taxed at a top marginal tax rate of 91%. Bernie Sanders, I believe, has proposed something similar in the 60s. But we have a couple of hedge fund managers in the United States who have each made $1.7 billion in the past year. And we as a society have apparently decided that it's better to allow a few people to accumulate unlimited amounts of wealth than it is to provide health care and government services for everyone. And I believe that's fundamentally wrong. I believe that's fundamentally against what our country is supposed to be about. So I think we should start making the wealthiest few pay their fair share again.
Congressman Foxx.
Republicans have proposed comprehensive tax reform. We have been doing everything we can to reform the tax code, but with a Democrat Senate and a Democrat president, it's been very difficult over the last 6 years. But my opponent fails to mention that many small businesses are corporations. He wants to regulate corporations more, raise taxes on corporations, when the only thing sometimes keeping small businesses in business are the fact that they are corporations. Many small businesses pay taxes at the individual rate. And so what Republicans want to do is lower taxes on everyone. We believe you know how to spend your money better than the federal government knows how to spend your money. So we want everyone, individuals, businesses, corporations, to keep more of their money. So we have a comprehensive tax plan. It's under better.gop. I'd encourage you to go look at it. We call it a better way, and it is a better way. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about that better way. Until this past year, I would do my own taxes. I thought it was my patriotic duty. Unfortunately, it's now so complicated, I have to hire somebody to do it. And there are so many deductions and so many loopholes that people who earn more than I do, who have a greater group of accountants than I do, are able to take advantage of. Why can't our income tax system be simplified? What do you recommend?
Well, I happen to be a person who has signed on to the fair tax, but I could go along with the flat tax too. I think we all should be able to do our taxes on the back of a postcard, so I am in favor of that. Currently, there's not a majority of people in the House or the Senate who agree with that. So again, I'm very comfortable with what we have proposed under a better way, which is to simplify the tax code tremendously, make the IRS be the friend of the American people instead of the gotcha people who are out there looking to hurt the American people all the time. And I agree with our esteemed moderator. You should not have to hire people to do your taxes for you. If we live in a country where the tax forms are too complicated for the average person to be able to do them, something has to happen. And that's what we propose in a better way.
Mr. Brannon?
Well, interestingly, this is one example of companies buying lawmakers. The only reason right now that we can't go to the IRS website and do our taxes step by step there is tax preparation companies have lobbied our lawmakers to prevent the IRS from being able to do that. So, we have a system where we have to hire tax preparers every year or, buy tax software because the system is complicated. And yes, of course, hedge fund managers can afford to hire the people who do that. And right now, as I was saying, two hedge fund managers last year made $1.7 billion each. And because of the carried interest loophole, they actually don't even have to pay full income tax rate on that income. They only have to pay capital gains tax rate, which is roughly half. It's a big problem, and we've got to fix it on several levels.
Since the 1970s, wages have stagnated for the middle class and income disparity has grown between the haves and the have-nots. These have occurred at the same time as labor unions' influence has waned, trade deals and technology have challenged traditional manufacturing, and the economy has moved more to service orientation. Where do you see the good jobs that pay a living wage coming from? Can government help in that area at all? Mr. Brannon?
Yeah, we've got a big problem, especially here in the 5th District. In Wilkes County alone, since Representative Foxx took office in 2005, Wilkes has lost $100 million a year in private payroll, which is an incredible amount no matter how you slice it. But in a community that size, you can't take $100 million a year out and not have profound implications. So yeah, we need to look forward. We need to look at what jobs are going to be prominent in the future, and that is not going to be manufacturing jobs because those jobs are going to be automated. It's not going to be truck drivers. It's pretty soon. We're going to put 3.5 million truck drivers out of work as soon as we have autonomous vehicles. We can replace 3.5 million truck drivers, with cars or with trucks that can drive themselves. And so we do have to look forward. And I believe that one of the things for the 5th District is we should create a tech hub so that we can have software jobs here, and we can work on this problem that way.
Congressman Foxx.
Well, Mr. Tomlinson, I think a little issue with you saying that the economy and wages have stagnated since the 70s. We actually had a good economy in the 80s. Yes, we had a bad economy under President Carter, and then when Reagan came in, the economy boomed, but a good economy in the 90s. Our stagnant wages actually have come along with President Obama. Wages actually went down $3,000 on average up until this year, from the beginning of President Obama's term until this term. Again, I think that comes from too much government spending. I think the best thing that we can do to help, again, the economy in every way possible, cut federal government spending, reduce rules and regulations, and those are the things I have worked very, very strongly on. Improve education. We have 5.6 million jobs in this country going unfilled because people do not have the skills they need, and yet the federal government's been spending $18 billion a year on workforce development. Something's wrong. There's a disconnect.
It's very interesting. I was just wondering, between 2000 and 2008, unfunded wars and tax cuts that also affected things. Moving on, fear of terrorism is a huge issue in American minds. However, statistically, a person in Watauga County has a greater chance of being shot by a toddler in his house than being killed by a terrorist. How should we handle this issue? Congresswoman Foxx.
The number one role of the federal government is national security. Unfortunately, that part of our government has been undermined, again, because we spend so much money on things that the federal government does not need to be involved in. Counties and towns cannot handle national security. Only the federal government can do that. It's probably very little consolation, Mr. Tomlinson, if it's the person who's killed by that terrorist, that you're more likely to perhaps be killed by a toddler with a gun. I don't think that's much consolation. Here's an area where people should be looking to the federal government to protect them and to do for them the things they cannot do themselves. We absolutely have got a terrible situation right now in controlling terrorists coming into this country, and that is the role of the federal government. So my answer to that is have the federal government do its job by securing our borders, not just the southern border, but every border, and following people who come in here and overstay their visas.
Mr. Brannon.
Most of the recent mass killings in the United States have actually been homegrown. They haven't been people from abroad, and so I think that in a sense the terrorism fear is a little misplaced in that regard. Can you tell people that? Probably not. But at the same time, we need to look at things by the numbers. We need to figure out what is actually causing certain problems, and we use evidence-based lawmaking. We need to work on what actually gets results rather than what seems to be the general idea of what's going on in the world. National news, 24-hour news has hyperinflated a lot of issues that we wouldn't otherwise think about on a daily basis, and I think it's a question of just refining our priorities.
Well, you mentioned mass killings, mass shootings, and of course the Second Amendment protects the right of people to own guns. However, there are a lot of suggestions that we need to do a better job of making sure that people who don't deserve guns, either people who are criminals or people who are mentally unstable, don't get the guns. And one of the things was background checks for things like gun shows. How do you stand with that, Mr. Brannon?
I absolutely agree. 86% of Americans agree on universal background checks without the gun show loophole. So I'm fully in favor of universal background checks. I have absolutely no interest in taking anyone's guns away. We have 300 million guns in this country. We have probably more guns than people, so the idea that we could do that is ludicrous. But yes, I do believe that going forward, we absolutely should institute universal background checks.
Congresswoman Foxx.
I think the Second Amendment is about as clear as it can be. The right to the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed by the government. I think that there are adequate controls currently in existence. The vaunted gun show loophole is really not a loophole. And I would say that we have plenty of restrictions on people wanting to own guns. Of the people who have used guns to kill many, many people, those guns, in I believe every case, were obtained legally, but used improperly by people who shouldn't have them. You know, Moses gave us the 10 Commandments a long time ago. We know what's right and we know what's wrong. God told us a long time ago, thou shalt not kill. More laws do not stop bad behavior.
Time.
Well, as you said, the Second Amendment is very clear. And so is the Fourth Amendment, involving illegal searches and seizures, unreasonable searches and seizures. Yet, with the revelations of Edward Snowden and the NSA, we find that our country has done some things that have been questionable. Do you agree that there should be more restrictions on the NSA, or leave it as it is?
I, again, abhor any kind of government overreach into our lives. And I do not want the government gathering information on me that it has no business gathering. But there are other agencies that gather information on all of us every day. I point out, give a commercial to CVS. I go to CVS and shop every week. CVS knows a whole lot about me over my using my card there every week. So we are giving away information about ourselves every day on the internet and through using cards. But no, I don't want the federal government getting any more information about me than it needs. I have resisted having a student unit record because I do not want our government to be able to track people from cradle to grave or in school. I'm very concerned about that.
Time.
Mr. Brannon?
This is another thing that we significantly agree on. I am fully against universal wiretapping. I'm fully against the government being able to snoop on any of your information without a warrant. And I don't believe that a court that simply rubber stamps requests from the government is sufficient either. I also believe that we need to put more controls on corporations, Google, et cetera, that collect your data. I do believe that going forward, that could present a problem for a lot of us on many levels. And the interesting thing about digital data is that once it's collected, we can tell companies, we can tell federal agencies to get rid of it, but there's no way for them to prove that they've done so. And that's the scary thing, is that once it's out there forever. So I do believe we should have more regulations on that.
Yesterday, we learned that the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, may not be affordable after all. Health exchange costs are going up some 22% next year for those who are enrolled in healthcare.gov. What are your solutions for rising healthcare costs?
I believe that we should move to universal health care, period. I thought Obamacare was a bad compromise when it came out. The fundamental problem with Obamacare is that the people who can only afford the bronze plan, the plan with the $5,000 to $10,000 deductibles, are not the people who can afford the deductibles. So you're basically buying bankruptcy insurance. You're not buying health care. You spend $5,000 a year for health insurance that you can't use, and of course people are going to be upset about that. Right now, we're just letting the insurance companies work as profit takers. They slice 15% right off the top and keep it for themselves. And so and right now, North Carolina is down to one Obamacare insurer for 2017. So if there's no competition, the federal government needs to absolutely take it over, and we absolutely need to have single payer.
Congresswoman Foxx.
Well, no Republican voted for Obamacare, every Republican has voted every opportunity to repeal Obamacare. So we've been on the side of the angels on this issue. And by the way, the average increase is going to be 25%. Many people are going to see much, much higher increases in their premiums. It's simple as can be. Get the federal government out of health care. That will solve our problem. Having a single payer will make it even worse. Most of us can remember when the federal government was not so involved in health care and health insurance, and it was affordable. There really was a time when health care and health insurance were affordable in this country. That was before the federal government got involved. So get the federal government out, you will bring down the cost of health insurance and the cost of health care. Think about it. You buy your own car insurance, you buy your own homeowner's insurance. They haven't gone up in the same way that health insurance has gone up. So give that some thought.
The two most popular programs in government today, Medicare and Social Security. Why can't we have Medicare for all?
Well, Medicare program is going broke. The average couple right now who is drawing Medicare has paid into Medicare approximately $165,000 in premiums. And yet that couple will withdraw in cost from Medicare about $450,000. You all look at your own situation. How long can you spend 3 times more, almost 3 times more, than you are bringing in income? It just doesn't work. It doesn't work for individuals. It doesn't work for the government. On Social Security, when Social Security began, there were 33 people paying into Social Security. The lifespan in this country was 59 years of age. We are now at 2.5 people paying into Social Security, and the average lifespan is 80.
Mr. Brannon?
As you might imagine, I completely disagree. Every other significant country in the world besides the United States has universal health care. We are the only one, and I fail to see how we're exceptional in that way, that we can't manage to have the same thing that every other country does. And we need to just scrap the payments into Medicare completely. We need to make it so that if you're sick, you can go to the doctor, period. Because the problem with getting sick, you don't have time to shop around for a hospital. You don't have time to price compare, and that's what's required to be able to make the basic capitalism rules work. Someone has to be able to shop around for a product. And when you're incredibly sick, when you have to go to the hospital, you don't have time to do that. You don't have time to call 5 different hospitals and say, hey, how much is this procedure there? So it's fundamentally incompatible with capitalism. So I believe that Medicare for all would be a great step in the right direction.
All right, new question. Drug costs are also going through the roof. A drug needed to cure hepatitis C must be taken daily for 24 to 48 weeks to save the patient's life. Costs $1 to produce. It was sold for $40 a pill recently, until the company was bought by a multinational pharmaceutical firm who now charges $1,000 for the same pill. It now costs up to $85,000 to save the life of a hepatitis patient. Yet, with the passage of the Medicare Part D, Congress forbade Medicare from negotiating with drug companies, which foreign countries routinely do. That's why drugs cost much less money in countries like India, Canada, and in Europe. What is your opinion of this, Mr. Brannon?
I think it's appalling. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we're the only country that doesn't allow the government to negotiate with drug companies. it means that we're literally subsidizing drugs for every other country, and I don't think we should be doing that. I don't think that a drug company should be able to do as described and buy a pre-existing drug and jack the prices up on it, especially when there's no competition. Like I was saying earlier, capitalism depends on there being competition for it to work properly, and when it doesn't, when there isn't competition, whoever's left can charge whatever they want if there are no other controls in place, and that's what's happened. And yes, it's a large problem with how our healthcare is priced.
Congresswoman Foxx.
I do think that we have a problem sometimes with some drugs in terms of their cost. But what we need in that regard is transparency and exposing that. And that's one of the ways Congress has worked very well to do that. But we have the best system in this country of healthcare we have had. And drugs take a lot of money to produce, to develop, research and develop, to get these excellent drugs that we have, which have expanded our lifespan tremendously. And I don't think just picking on the drug companies is the way to solve this problem. I think, again, we do need competition, and we need people to know what the costs are going to be and what their alternatives are. And again, very often what drives the cost of the drug up is the fact that the government is underwriting what the drug companies are getting for those. And if we had a true market system, you wouldn't see that happen.
Just a point of information, for this particular company, the R&D costs are about 50% less than the marketing costs. A recent 60 Minutes episode revealed that sitting members of Congress are expected to spend 10 to 20 hours a week, and it might be more than that, asking for money for future elections in their party. It's the least favorite part of the job, I would guess. Isn't it time for some campaign reform to get the money out of our elections? What do you recommend to reform this situation, Congressman Foxx?
I did not see that program in its entirety, but I did see bits and pieces of it, and what that member of Congress said is simply not true. No one pressures me to go raise money 10 to 20 hours a week. What I do is of my own volition. It does take some money to run for office. It takes money for all offices these days because there is strong competition. But I do not, again, you're asking for the government to get involved in something it has no business being involved in. We need free speech in this country, and the Supreme Court has ruled that campaign spending is free speech, and I believe in that. But many people win elections without a lot of money, and it has to do with organization. But what that 60 Minutes program showed was not accurate, and we do not. Now, I don't know about the other side of the aisle. I cannot testify to that. I know what happens in my caucus.
My favorite politician ever is former Texas Governor Ann Richards. And one of my favorite quotes, possibly my favorite quote of all time from her is, "Life isn't fair, but government absolutely must be." And that applies here. The problem with treating money as speech is that it means those who have more money have more speech. I couldn't disagree more. I believe that we need to repeal the court cases that set the precedent for that. I believe we need to repeal Citizens United. It's one of the main reasons I'm running for Congress, and I believe we need to switch to publicly funded elections, and I think that will give our lawmakers more time to actually make law than sit on the phone calling representatives begging for money, or calling constituents begging for money.
All right, we're at the